Chapter 1. The 2:30 a.m. call. The metallic taste of blood made it hard for him to breathe. The blood wasn't his, but he didn't know that yet. A siren wails somewhere in the distance, and rain beats on the hood of the patrol car, as if measuring the time until something inevitable. The cold air smells of gasoline, wet asphalt, and the fatigue of a city night. The dispatcher repeats the same thing. Missing student report. Name, Henry Louis Baltimore. 23 years old. Last call was from the dorm parking lot. Officer John Reed puts his radio down, wipes sweat from his brow, and stares into the darkness. A phone gleams on the pavement. It's new, but the screen is cracked, as if someone tried to call and changed their mind. Beyond that, nothing. No signs of a struggle, no blood, no tire tracks. Just a drumstick. Broken in half. Reed picks it up. The drywood cracks in his fingers. A student drummer, he mutters. Another one the world didn't let play a final set. He didn't know it would be the first and last thing that would remain of Henry Baltimore. Not a body. Not a thing. Rhythm. As Reed writes his report, the coffee cools faster than the ink on the paper. At 3:40, another call comes in. A female voice, trembling, as if holding the phone in both hands. This is Mrs. Baltimore. Where is my son? And Reed answers, tiredly, as usual. We're doing everything we can. Even though he knows they're doing nothing. In this city, no one looks for those who disappear at the wrong time. The headlights creep slowly across the wet asphalt. The air is thick with silence, like before a thunderstorm. All that remains in the parking lot is the echo of footsteps and a broken stick wrapped in a plastic bag. Do you think the truth is always on the victim's side? You're wrong. Sometimes the truth is just a little less afraid of the dark than those who seek it. Today we'll tell the story of a man who disappeared on the very night he was supposed to tell the truth. The story of Henry Louis Baltimore. Chapter 2. The first drummer. They say there's a rhythm inside everyone. Henry Baltimore's was louder than most. His roommates complained, that guy never sleeps, he beats out a marching tune even in his sleep. But Henry simply couldn't keep quiet. Silence was worse than beatings for him. It reminded him of those evenings when his father sat on the porch drinking, and his mother prayed, staring into space. He was born in the South, in a town where the word equality sounded like a joke. His mother was a nurse and believed in miracles. His father was a mechanic, always covered in oil, always with a guitar. From him, Henry inherited hands that couldn't be still. And the ability to transform pain into music. When he entered Michigan State University, no one expected him to become a drum major. The first black man to lead a marching band in campus history. It sounded like a victory. But in America, every victory is simply an invitation to a new test. You know they won't let you up there, the music teacher, an old white man with a cigarette that smelled of cheap tobacco, told him. Then I'll build the stage myself, Henry replied and smiled. He always smiled. Even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. He was respected, but not accepted. At the bar, they called him Mr. Beat. On the podium, our show guy. At rehearsals, band leader. And behind him, the black men with the sticks. He knew how they looked at him. He knew that every word he said would be considered a challenge, every silence an admission of guilt. And yet, he kept playing. Because stopping meant admitting that silence had won. And he hated losing. One day he told a friend in the orchestra. Music is the only place where I don't have to explain why I'm alive. She didn't understand. She simply nodded, pretending to understand. The irony is that it was the drums, the rhythm of his salvation, that became his final signal. Half of the drumstick is in the car. The other half is listed as an unrecognized object. Henry Baltimore pounded the loudest. But, oddly enough, just when he should have been heard, the world put on headphones. And all that remains is an echo. He didn't yet know that a week later his name would be printed in the newspaper. Not as a winner. As a missing person. Chapter 3. The night of the attack. It had been raining for 3 hours straight. The city smelled of wet iron and cheap coffee from an all-night gas station. Henry was walking home after rehearsal, tired, wet, but satisfied. He'd just finished an arrangement for the university orchestra. The song was called March of the Silent. Ironic, right? Drumsticks protruded from his back pocket. He tapped them on the handrail while waiting for the bus, quietly, rhythmically, as if checking to see if the world around him was still alive. A black SUV appeared suddenly. No headlights. No sound. The door opened, and 3 people emerged from the darkness. Guys in varsity jackets, the kind given to rich kids so they'll remember everything's been bought. One of them was Jason Hayward. The son of a deputy, a future lawyer, a professional heir. His laugh was like that of those who are sure they have a lawyer behind them and their father's company ahead of them. "Hey, drummer," Jason said, approaching. "Play us something." "Not today," Henry replied. "I'm tired." But they didn't hear. Or didn't want to. One blow, to the stomach. Another, to the face. The sound of the drumstick falling merged with the rain. Henry smelled beer and gasoline. Then the taste of blood. It was always the same. Metallic. Like a reminder that everything inside is the same color. He didn't shout. He simply looked into their eyes. And that, for some reason, angered them even more. "Look at him. He's not even yelling," someone shouted. "He thinks he's a hero." They left when he stopped moving. One of them said, "Nothing personal, I was just knocking too loudly." 20 minutes later, 2 students found him. His face was bruised, his lips were torn, but his eyes were alive. When they lifted him, he said only one thing. "Remember." There were 3 of them. One was wearing a jacket with gold letters. And then he lost consciousness. At the hospital, they stitched him up and asked if he would file a complaint. He replied, "Yes. I didn't learn to beat the drum just to remain silent." That night, Henry Baltimore survived. Or maybe that night, he began to die. Because there are things after which the body lives, but the soul goes first, to see if there will be justice. He didn't yet know that in a week he would be summoned to court. And that in 2, he would be gone. And the drumstick, the very one that fell in the puddle, would reappear. Only in the missing persons report. Chapter 4. The trial that never happened. The room smelled of painkillers and bleach. A hospital at night is like a train station, where no one knows when they'll leave or if they'll ever return. Henry sat on his bed, looking at his hands. His fingers trembled. Not from fear, but from anger. With these fingers, he tapped out a rhythm in front of thousands of spectators. Now he was signing a police report with them. "Are you sure you want to sue?" asked Detective Reed, the same one who would later find his car. "Yes. He's the deputy's son." "You'll be in trouble." "I already am." A week later, he received an official notice, a summons to appear in court on April 21st. The case was Baltimore versus Hayward. The campus immediately became noisy. The university newspaper wrote, "Musician demands justice." And in the comments section of the article, someone commented, "He brought this on himself." The internet loves the truth, as long as it doesn't keep you from sleeping peacefully. The next day, the Hayward family's lawyer came to see him. A man in a gray suit, with a smile practiced during the election campaign. "Henry," he said softly, "you're a smart guy. You don't need trouble, do you?" "I need justice." "Justice," he chuckled. "Justice is just an expensive form of revenge." He held out an envelope. $5,000. And the phrase, "To settle the matter humanely." Henry laughed. Quietly. Without joy. "If I take it, I'll become like them. And if you don't take it, you'll become an example." Well, someone needs an example. That night, he couldn't sleep for a long time. The patter of rain on the windowsill was out of rhythm. He felt something was wrong. Someone called his cell phone, but he didn't answer. And then the phone went silent. The next day, he was seen in the dorm parking lot. Black jacket, hooded, drumsticks in his hands. He was smoking, even though he never smoked. Maybe from nerves. Maybe because he already understood that his choice had been made, and there was no turning back. Henry Baltimore was supposed to appear in court. But justice doesn't like witnesses who speak too honestly. It prefers those who know how to disappear at the right time. And Henry disappeared. Not like a coward. Like a man who understood, sometimes the truth doesn't need an audience. 3 days later, he didn't show up for court. His lawyer shrugged. The judge adjourned the hearing. And his mother said he wouldn't have run away. He feared God, but not people. In a minute, everything will change. Because someone's already watching his car in the parking lot. And the engine's still warm. And there's a broken drumstick lying on the seat. Chapter 5. Disappearance. The patrol found the car early in the morning. Friday. The gray Chevrolet sat at the edge of the university parking lot, as if someone had parked it for a minute and forgotten it had passed. The key was in the ignition. The phone was on the seat. The wallet was in the glove compartment. The doors weren't forced. And on the floor mat was half a drumstick. The car smelled like the cars of living people always do: gasoline, deodorant, mint-flavored gum. Only the owner had ceased to exist in those coordinates where time moves forward. Detective Reed was the first to notice the oddity. No blood, no signs of a struggle. Just vanished. His partner yawned. Maybe he left with someone. Who? Well, it happens. Young, hot-blooded people. Reed looked at the empty seat. No. This guy isn't the type to leave without saying goodbye. That evening, the mother came to the station. In her hands was a thermos of cold coffee. She held it like a child. He couldn't have just disappeared, she said. He had to go to court. The officer looked over his glasses. Ma'am, these things happen. Maybe he went to see friends. What about the phone? Lost it. What about the car? Forgot it. She was silent. Sometimes silence speaks louder than a scream. The police filed a report. Citizen of Baltimore, Henry Lewis. Age 23. Status, missing. Presumed voluntary departure. That's all. 3 paragraphs to write off a man. Whispers swirled around campus. Some said he'd left. Others said he'd been taken by the people he was planning to testify against. Still others simply sighed, I feel sorry for the guy, but we have a game tomorrow. The university follows its own schedule. A week later, volunteers combed the forest belt near the highway. They found a cap, but the wrong one. They found tire tracks, but they were old. They found a prayer book in the mud. Inside, a line underlined in pencil. Blessed are those who thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Sometimes people don't disappear. They just stop looking for them. They stopped looking for Henry Baltimore after 3 weeks. And the city fell asleep again to the sound of the rain. After all, if you don't notice something missing, it's as if it never happened. But that same evening, Detective Reed found an envelope on his desk. And signed. No return address. Inside, a photograph, darkness, a flash of light, a silhouette by the river. And on the back was a short inscription. Truth never sinks. He didn't know that this was only the beginning. Chapter 6. Theories and Red Herrings. On the 4th day after the disappearance, the city woke up famous. Every newspaper was carrying the same photograph, a smiling Henry with a drum. Caption, talented musician missing. Nervous breakdown possible. The headline sold coffee better than the morning ad. The first theory, he left on his own. The police love stories like that, cheap and paperless. Stress, trial, pressure, depression, the sergeant listed, as if diagnoses were bullets to kill doubt. Reed remained silent. He'd seen too many, left on his own, stories that later surfaced in Rivers. The second theory, kidnapping. The newspapers eagerly picked up on it. Witness in high-profile case against deputy son disappears day before trial. Under each headline was an ad for legal services. Modern black humor, truth is touted as a discount on justice. The third version is the most convenient. It's all made up. They say there was no attack, no trial, the kid just wanted fame. Journalists love to suspect, especially when the victim can't answer. Someone claimed to have seen Henry on a bus heading to Detroit. Another claimed to have heard him playing blues on the street under a false name. And one student swore she saw his silhouette by the river at night. He was standing there, as if waiting for someone to start applauding. They checked the cameras, a trash can was on the recording. But the trash can didn't deny it. 2 weeks later, the university held a memorial evening. His orchestra comrades stood on stage, playing that same March of the Silent. The rector gave a speech about a young man whose energy is inspiring. And afterward, the buffet was lavish. Cheese, wine, the spotlights. Everyone applauded. No one asked where the body was. Detective Reed was drinking alone that evening. On the table lay a file titled, Baltimore, Case Number 1479. He opened it and found a piece of paper with a penciled note. Are you sure you're looking for the missing person, and not the one interfering? When a person disappears, theories quickly fill the void. A theory is simply a way to explain why we're too lazy to seek the truth. And the truth, it's quieter than a drum. It's inaudible when public opinion is playing nearby. A month later, the case was officially suspended. Lack of new evidence, they said. And they added a phrase that could close any story. The investigation is ongoing. But Reed kept staring at the photograph with the caption, Truth Floats. He didn't know that a few weeks later, that phrase would be confirmed. Because water retains memories better than humans. Chapter 7. The Irony of Fate. 6 months had passed. Case number 1479 lay in the archives, between the accidents and unidentified persons folders. Dust, the only witness who never left the scene. Jason Hayward was acquitted. Insufficient evidence, the judge said, tapping his gavel like a metronome. The family's lawyer smiled. We are glad justice has been served. The reporters nodded and wrote down the phrase verbatim, as a slogan, not as a joke. Hayward removed his ring from his finger and dropped a glass of whiskey. To Henry. May he rest in peace, he said, laughing. No one argued, it was happy hour at the bar. The university announced a grant in his name. The Henry Baltimore Scholarship for Young Talent from Low-Income Families. His march was played at the ceremony. The rector read the speech from the prompter, then shook the hand of the sponsor, Jason's father. The crowd applauded. Loudly. Almost like a funeral for a conscience. Henry's mother stood at the back of the hall. She wore an old dress that smelled of pharmacy and rain. She didn't clap. She only quietly said to the reporter next to her, Do you even know why he died? The reporter answered honestly. What, he died? Officially, he's missing. And she wrote down her words in her notebook, in case she needed them for a lead-in. Detective Reed, meanwhile, was leaving. The boss shrugged. You worry too much about other people's sons. Reed replied. The problem is, I don't have any of my own. Well, I won't if you argue with the boss. He handed in his badge, took the baton, the one from the evidence, and walked out into the rain. On the way out, he tossed it in the trash can. The wood clicked, like a final chord. Henry Baltimore has become a symbol. A symbol is a convenient form of oblivion, you can hang it on the wall and not listen to it. Henry's music plays before every football game. People sing along, not realizing that the march is written in the key of guilt. But the city doesn't like silence. So every weekend, the drums still thunder in the stadium. And if you listen closely, you can hear a brief echo between the beats. As if someone were beating from across the water. I'm here. Chapter 8. The Last Chord. The river always returns. Sometimes it's trash. Sometimes it's memory. 3 years later, a boy was fishing near an old bridge. The sun was in his eyes, the water smelled of iron. He caught something hard and pulled a piece of wood from the silt. Half a drumstick. The very same one Henry Baltimore had once held. On it were traces of varnish, blood, and a nearly faded engraving. HB. The forensic team tested the DNA. A match. The case was reopened, formally closed. The papers were filed and stamped, no suspects. Then, into the archives, under the same dust. Henry's mother didn't come to collect the evidence. She said, Let him stay with them. Maybe at least their hands don't shake when they hold his memory. She no longer went to church. She believed God was like a detective, always showing up when it's too late. Detective Reed lives in a trailer outside of town. Sometimes at night, he pulls an old copy of the photo out of a drawer, the one where Henry is smiling with a drum. He looks into the darkness and says, "Have you been found, boy?" The only answer is the rain on the roof. The same rhythm that started it all. The university still plays his march. Only no one knows that the last note in the score is wrong. Henry deliberately changed the chord. A semitone lower. So it sounds like a question no one has answered. Sometimes the truth doesn't die. It just sinks into the water. And waits for someone to learn to listen again. Henry Baltimore didn't become a hero. He became a pause. And a pause is also a part of music.